Welcome, everyone, to Deep Dive English. If you're someone who loves to stay informed, loves knowing the big ideas shaping our world, but, finding the time to read those crucial books can be tough. Well, this is exactly for you.
That's right. We're here to give you that shortcut, that deep understanding, without you having to carve out weeks of reading time.
And today, we are diving deep, really immersing ourselves into a book that's honestly shaped so much discussion about the 21st century. Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a big one. And our mission here isn't just a quick summary. We're aiming to really narrate the whole argument, get into the core ideas, the philosophy behind it.
So you walk away feeling like you've got the complete picture of how Harari sees humanity's agenda shifting. Think of it as like a framework for the next 100 years or so.
Exactly. So where do we start? Harari kicks off with this broad historical view.
Right. He says, look back. For almost all of history, think ancient Egypt, medieval India, even 20th century China life, for most people, was dominated by three huge constant problems.
Famine, plague, and war. They were just there, looming, part of the deal.
Yeah, people sort of accepted them, didn't they? Like, this is just how life is. Maybe it's God's plan. Maybe it's just our flawed nature.
Prophets, philosophers, ordinary people, they mostly believed only some kind of apocalypse or divine intervention could truly end these things that felt inevitable.
Okay, but here's the bombshell Harari drops right at the start. He says, roll forward to the 21st century, the third millennium, and humanity wakes up.
And realizes, wait a minute, we're actually getting these under control. Systematically.
Which sounds, maybe a bit optimistic when you look at the news sometimes.
Right, and he adds that nuance immediately. It's not that they've vanished completely, of course not. You still see conflict, you still see hunger.
But the nature of the threat has changed.
Exactly. They've gone from being these unstoppable forces of nature or God that could wipe out huge chunks of humanity to becoming, manageable challenges, technical problems, political failures, often.
Things we no longer see as just inevitable fate. And that, he argues, has totally rewritten what humanity is focused on.
A fundamental shift in the human agenda.
Okay, let's break those down. First up, famine. The one that probably haunted our ancestors the most.
Absolutely. For millennia, most humans lived right on the edge, what Harari calls the biological poverty line. Meaning any little thing could push you over. A bad harvest, maybe robbers stealing your grain, even just too much rain at the wrong time.
And suddenly your family, maybe your whole village, is starving. Not just hungry, but actually starving to death.
Yeah. Life was incredibly fragile, and the descriptions Harari pulls from history, they're brutal.
He mentions that report from France, 1694, Beauvais.
Yes. An official report describing widespread famine. It talks about an infinite number of poor souls, weak from hunger and wretchedness and dying from want. Just bleak.
And what people were forced to eat. It's hard to even imagine.
Unimaginable. The report details people eating, quote, unclean things. Things like cats, rotting horse flesh scavenged from dung heaps. Ugh.
Cow blood, awful. Nettles, weeds, roots. Basically anything they could find and boil. It wasn't about a balanced diet. It was about avoiding immediate starvation.
A total collapse below subsistence.
Exactly. Now, Harari contrasts that sharply with today. He's careful. He acknowledges nutritional insecurity still exists.
Right. Like in modern France, he says 6 million people still struggle, often relying on cheap starches, sugar, salt, lacking protein.
And this is the crucial point, nutritional insecurity is not famine in that historical sense.
It's a different category of problem.
Completely. Because today we have global trade, food aid, government safety nets, scientific agriculture, things that just didn't exist in 1694.
So even people in the poorest slums today, say around Paris or Beauvais, they aren't dying because they literally haven't eaten anything for weeks.
Precisely. The threat of mass starvation from natural causes, like a crop failure wiping out a whole region, we've largely engineered that out of existence, thanks to technology and, global interconnectedness.
It's a profound change when you think about it like that. Huge. Okay, second big enemy, plague.
And it's ironic, isn't it? Our own success building cities, trading across continents, actually made us more vulnerable.
Totally. Cities were petri dishes. Ancient Athens, medieval Florence, perfect breeding grounds for pathogens, and people knew it. You lived with the fear that some invisible killer could sweep through at any moment.
The historical examples are terrifying. Captain Cook in Hawaii, 1778.
Oh, yeah. A population of 500,000 totally isolated from Eurasian diseases. Cook arrives, brings flu, TB, syphilis. Later ships bring smallpox.
Result?
By 1853, only 70,000 Hawaiians left. It was near genocide by germs, almost wiped out.
And even much later, the Spanish flu in 1918. We think of World War I as the great killer of that era.
But the flu was far deadlier. It used the war's own global transport networks to spread like wildfire. Infected maybe 500 million people, a third of the world's population back then.
500 million infected?
Yeah.
And the death toll?
Estimated between 50 and 100 million people in less than a year. Compare that to the 40 million killed over 4 years of brutal trench warfare.
Wow. It puts it in perspective.
And remember, until the early 20th century, it was normal for about a third of kids to die before adulthood. Malnutrition and disease. That was just life.
So we've managed to turn that corner too.
Yeah.
But Harari adds a really chilling caveat here, doesn't he?
He does. He says the era of humans being helpless victims of natural epidemics, that's probably over. We have the science, the surveillance, the ability to respond quickly.
Yeah.
But the very same biotechnology that lets us cure diseases also lets us create them.
Engineered pandemics.
Exactly. Armies, terrorists, maybe even rogue states. They could potentially design pathogens far worse than anything nature threw at us. Targeted, maybe. More virulent.
So the threat shifts from nature to us. Future major epidemics are likely to be man-made, possibly for ideological reasons.
That's the unsettling conclusion. We beat nature's plagues only to potentially unleash our own.
Okay, that's a sobering thought. Let's move to the third ancient enemy, war.
Historically, war was just assumed, wasn't it? The default state, what Harari calls the law of the jungle.
Like in 1913, Germany and France might have been technically at peace, but everyone knew war was probably coming. Budgets, plans, infrastructure, it was all built with war as a likely scenario.
Always factored in. But Harari argues that calculation has fundamentally changed, especially for the major world powers.
For the first time, he says, many governments, big corporations, they just don't see a major war as a probable event in their immediate future planning.
Which is a radical shift. And he gives two main reasons.
First one's pretty obvious, I guess. Nukes.
Yep. Mutually assured destruction. MAD. It basically made all-out war between superpowers, collective suicide. So they had to find other ways, diplomacy, economics, proxy conflicts maybe, but direct confrontation became unthinkable.
Okay, makes sense. What's the second reason?
This one's more subtle, maybe more profound. It's the shift in the basis of wealth.
From material stuff to knowledge.
Exactly. Historically, wealth was tangible. Gold mines, fertile land, oil wells. You could conquer those things. Send in an army, seize the assets.
But you can't really conquer Silicon Valley and steal Google's code, can you?
You can't. I mean, you could bomb it, but you destroy the value. The value today is in knowledge, in human capital, in networks, in innovation, things you can't just seize by force.
So war becomes less profitable, at least for these knowledge-based economies.
That's the argument. It makes less economic sense. Now, that doesn't mean war vanishes everywhere.
Right, you can still loot resources in places with more traditional material-based economies. He mentions coltan in Rwanda in the 90s.
Exactly. That kind of resource war still happens, but the major wars between the big global powers, the ones driving the knowledge economy, they've become much less likely because they're just not good business anymore.
It changes the incentives dramatically. The main arenas of conflict shift.
Right. Towards resource-rich areas, or maybe cyber warfare, economic competition, but less large-scale invasions between the big players.
Okay, so if famine, plague, and war are receding as the primary drivers of human effort, what takes their place? Harari argues we're pivoting to a new set of ambitious goals.
3 huge ones, really. Overcoming death itself, achieving immortality or something close to it. Finding the secret to universal lasting happiness, and basically gaining godlike powers of creation and destruction through technology and fictions.
Let's start with cheating death, or as you said, maybe immortality is a better term.
Yeah, Harari prefers that. The idea isn't necessarily living forever in this body, but overcoming death from technical causes, disease, old age. Modern medicine already treats death like a technical problem, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, when someone dies, the doctor doesn't write death as the cause. They write cancer, heart failure, infection, a specific technical failure.
Which implies a technical solution might be possible someday.
Exactly. It fosters this deep cultural belief that eventually we can fix the glitch, we can solve death.
And this leads to some pretty wild predictions, right?
Yeah.
People talking about overcoming death by 2200 or 2100.
Oh, yeah. And then you have thinkers like Ray Kurzweil, Aubrey de Grey. They're even more optimistic, or, as Harari puts it, maybe more sanguine.
What's their timeline?
They suggest anyone healthy and crucially wealthy enough to make it to around 2050 has a decent shot at immortality.
Ow.
The idea is continuous upgrades. Every decade or so, you get a biological makeover, regenerate tissues, maybe swap out organs, use nanobots to repair cells, essentially staying one step ahead of decay until the next wave of technology arrives.
Postponing death indefinitely. Wow. But why are we pouring so much money and brain power into this?
Simple economics, according to Harari. The market for overcoming aging and death is potentially infinite.
Right. He asks the reader, how much would you pay to get your 25-year-old body back?
And the answer for many people, especially wealthy ones, is pretty much anything. That potential payoff drives incredible investment.
But this isn't just a scientific quest, is it? He sees huge political conflict coming.
Absolutely. If or when these life extension technologies become real, the fight over who gets them could dwarf previous conflicts. Imagine the social tension if only the super rich can afford to essentially live indefinitely while everyone else still faces mortality.
The struggle for eternal youth.
Yeah.
That could get ugly.
Bitter political battles fought in parliaments, courts, maybe even on the streets.
Okay. Goal number 2. The pursuit of happiness with a capital H.
This one's also seeing a big shift. Think back to the U.S. Declaration of Independence, 1776. They enshrined the pursuit of happiness.
Meaning the government should basically get out of the way and let you try to find it yourself. Limit interference.
Right. But then came thinkers like Jeremy Bentham, the utilitarian philosopher. His idea was radically different.
That was his take.
He argued the sole purpose of the state, the market, science itself, should be to increase global happiness, the greatest happiness of the greatest number.
So it subtly shifted from a personal right to pursue happiness to almost a right to be happy.
Pretty much. If you're unhappy, it starts to feel like a system failure, something the government or the market should fix for you. We expect happiness now.
But Harari points out a huge psychological trap here, the expectation balloon.
Yeah, happiness isn't just about our objective conditions, how much food we have, our health, etc. It's heavily dependent on our expectations.
And as conditions improve dramatically, less famine, less disease, our expectations just inflate to match.
Or even outpace the improvements. So despite living lives of unprecedented comfort and safety compared to our ancestors, we might end up feeling just as dissatisfied or even more anxious because we expect constant bliss.
Like a hedonic treadmill we can't get off.
Exactly. And biology offers a reason why, doesn't it?
The scientific view is that happiness, suffering, they're just biochemical states, right? Balances of hormones and neurotransmitters.
Right. And our biochemical system, shaped by evolution, wasn't designed for constant happiness. It was designed for survival and reproduction.
So happiness is just a tool.
A temporary one. An ephemeral sales gimmick, as Harari colorfully puts it. Evolution gives us a jolt of pleasure for doing things that help us survive or reproduce, eating, sex, social bonding, but it fades quickly.
Why'd it have to fade?
Because if we were permanently blissed out, we'd just sit under a tree and starve, wouldn't we? We wouldn't be motivated to go out and find food, seek mates, avoid danger. Contentment would be deadly for the species.
So we're wired for the chase, not the permanent reward.
That seems to be the case. He uses that famous rat experiment to illustrate it.
Ah, the one with the electrodes in the brain.
Yeah. Rats could press a lever to directly stimulate the pleasure centers in their brains.
And what happened?
They loved it. They preferred pressing the lever over eating or drinking. They just keep pressing it, ignoring everything else.
Until they collapse.
Until they collapse from exhaustion and starvation. It shows we're driven by this quest for certain sensations, sometimes even to our own detriment. It's not just calm contentment we seek, but often excitement, novelty, the hit.
And this biochemical pursuit has massive social consequences, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He links it directly to crime.
He does. He points out that the pursuit of pleasant biochemical states, mainly through drugs, is a leading cause of crime. In the UK, he cites stats suggesting over half of inmates committed crimes related to getting or using drugs.
Trying to shortcut the system chemically.
Exactly. And the state ends up fighting this stubborn, bloody, and hopeless war, as he calls it, trying to regulate our internal biochemistry. It's a huge challenge to the social order.
Okay, the third goal, achieving godlike power. And Harari links this to our unique ability to create fictions, Intersubjective realities.
Yeah, this is a core idea from his previous book, Sapiens, too. Humans dominate the planet not just because of our intelligence, but because language allows us to create and believe in shared stories, things that don't exist objectively, but shape our reality because we collectively agree they do.
Like what? Money, nations, corporations, human rights.
All of them. The EU, the World Bank. They only exist in our shared imagination, but they have immense real-world power. They're intersubjective realities.
And this isn't new, right? He traces it way back.
Oh, yeah. Ancient Sumerian gods, he argues, functioned a lot like modern corporations. They were legal fictions that could own land, lend money, employ people. They worked because everyone agreed the god owned the temple farm.
Or the pharaoh in Egypt.
Right. It wasn't the biological man, the specific Tutankhamun or Ramses, who truly ruled. It was the idea of the pharaoh, the brand, you might say.
Like Elvis Presley or maybe Justin Bieber today. The person dies or fades, but the brand, managed by lawyers and agents, keeps going.
Exactly. The imagined pharaoh, represented by symbols and maintained by thousands of literate officials using papyrus records, ruled the Nile Valley. The fiction outlived the biology.
And this power of written fictions, of bureaucracy, can actually override reality sometimes, with disastrous results.
Absolutely. He gives the chilling example of Mao's Great Leap Forward in China, 1958 to 61.
What happened there?
Mao demanded huge increases in grain production. Local officials, terrified of failing, just faked the numbers. They sent reports up the chain saying they'd had record harvests.
And the central government believed the reports.
They did. The reports became amplified as they went up. By the end, Beijing was operating on the fiction that grain production was way higher than reality. Based on these fictions on paper, they exported huge amounts of rice.
Leaving nothing for their own people.
Leading to the worst famine in history. Tens of millions died. The written reports, the fiction, literally killed them because it replaced objective reality in the halls of power.
Wow, that's stark.
And he gives another example from Tanzania's collective farm projects. Official reports in the capital claimed success, new villages built, fields planted.
But on the ground?
Villagers arrived to find nothing. No houses, no tools, no farms. The system ran on the paper reality, and the country went from being a food exporter to needing food aid.
It really hammers home that bureaucratic principle. What's written on your form is far more important than the actual reality it's supposed to describe.
The fiction shapes the reality, often tragically.
Okay, so this power of fiction leads us to what Harari identifies as the dominant organizing story, the dominant fiction of the modern era, humanism.
Right. And humanism, he says, is this revolutionary idea that basically flips the old religious formula. Instead of God giving meaning to human life, humanism says human experiences give meaning to the universe.
So we worship humanity itself.
In a sense, yes. The main commandment becomes, create meaning for a world that is inherently meaningless. Our feelings, our experiences become the ultimate source of value.
And the most successful branch of this has been liberal humanism or just liberalism.
Exactly. And its core belief is in the individual. Each person is unique, possesses this distinctive inner voice, this authentic self, and that inner voice is the supreme authority.
Think for yourself, trust your feelings, follow your heart.
That's the mantra. And it shapes everything. Politics, the voter knows best, economics, the customer's always right. Ethics. Knowledge comes from accumulating experiences and reflecting on them sensitively.
That customer's always right idea. He uses it to explain the justification for, say, genetically engineered farm animals, right?
Yeah. The example of Professor Anderson, who designs super productive cows or chickens, even if they suffer physically.
How does he justify it?
By appealing to liberalism. He says, look, if millions of customers freely choose to buy the cheapest meat, they are expressing their desires. Their free will justifies the system. Who am I, an expert, to override the customer's choice?
It places the responsibility and the authority squarely on the individual's free choice.
Even in war narratives, we saw a shift from stories about generals and glory
to the experience of the common soldier, like all quiet on the Western Front.
Exactly. The focus became the soldier's inner world, his feelings, his suffering, his shattered illusions. His individual experience became the ultimate truth about war, more important than any grand strategy.
But this whole foundation, the unique individual, the sacred inner voice, free will, Harari, argues it's now under serious attack from science.
A direct biological and technological assault, yeah. Science is chipping away at the very idea of free will.
How so? What's the scientific argument?
Well, physics and biology suggest our choices are either deterministic, caused by prior events like dominoes falling, or They're random based on, say, spontaneous quantum events in the brain, like a radioactive atom decaying unpredictably.
And neither of those is free will in the way we usually think of it, right?
Not really. If it's determined, it wasn't free. If it's random, it wasn't willed. It was just noise. So where does that leave the conscious I that feels like it's making choices?
And we have actual experiments now that seem to back this up. Brain scanners.
Yes, those experiments are quite famous now. Scientists can monitor your brain activity while you're asked to make a simple choice, like pressing a button with your left or right hand.
And they can see the decision forming before you are aware of making it.
That's the finding. They see neural activity indicating the choice several hundred milliseconds, sometimes even seconds, before the person reports having consciously decided. Your brain seems to decide before you do.
Which really messes with the idea of conscious control, doesn't it? If the scanner knows first, who am I?
It suggests our feeling of making a choice might be more like an after-the-fact story we tell ourselves, a rationalization.
This links to Daniel Kahneman's work, doesn't it? The two selves.
Right. Kahneman distinguishes between the experiencing self and the narrating self.
The experiencing self is the present moment, feeling the pain or pleasure right now.
Yes, like the immediate unpleasantness of sticking your hand in ice water. It lives purely in the present, moment by moment.
And the narrating self.
That's the storyteller in your head. It takes those moments, spins them into a narrative, evaluates the past, makes plans for the future. It's the one that makes the big decisions.
But the crucial thing Harari points out, based on Kahneman, is that the narrating self is flawed. It's duration blind.
Exactly. It doesn't care much about how long an experience lasts. It mostly remembers and judges based on the peak intensity, good or bad, and how it ends. It creates a very edited, biased summary.
Use that cold water experiment again, right?
Yes. People put one hand in icy water for 60 seconds. Unpleasant. Then the other hand for 90 seconds, 60 seconds of the same icy water, plus 30 seconds of slightly less cold water at the end.
So the second experience is longer overall, but ends a tiny bit better.
Right. Objectively more total discomfort in the second trial. But when asked which one they'd prefer to repeat,
They chose the longer one.
overwhelmingly. Because the narrating self just remembered the peak pain and the less awful ending. It ignored the extra 30 seconds of cold. Our choices are driven by this biased storyteller, not the sum total of our experience.
Okay, so if there's no real free will, and the self-making decisions is this flawed narrator, what are the implications?
Huge implications. It means our desires or choices could potentially be manipulated or even engineered through
Right.
drugs, genetic tweaking, direct brain stimulation.
We stop seeing ourselves as sacred individuals and start seeing ourselves as hackable biochemical systems, systems that need optimizing.
It's already happening in the language we use, isn't it? You might talk about optimizing your neurotransmitters or checking your genetic profile before making a career choice. The authority shifts from the inner voice to the external data, the scan, the algorithm.
Which leads directly into the rise of dataism and algorithms taking over. If liberalism trusted the inner voice, dataism trusts the data stream.
Precisely. What happens when an external algorithm crunching massive amounts of data about you knows your desires and patterns better than your own narrating self does?
And Harari says the evidence suggests this is already happening, that Facebook study.
Yeah, pretty shocking. 2014, based on just 300 of your Facebook likes, the algorithm could predict your opinions and preferences better than your spouse could.
Wow. Better than your spouse with 300 likes.
And it needed only 70 likes to beat your friends, 10 likes to beat your work colleagues. Even people's own self-assessments about things like their personality or substance use were often less accurate than the algorithm's prediction.
The algorithm already knows us better than we know ourselves, in some ways.
That's the alarming conclusion. And as this gap widens, the researchers predicted people will increasingly defer to algorithms for major life decisions.
Giving up our autonomy for better outcomes. Optimization.
Potentially. Think about health decisions based on constant biometric monitoring, like Google's baseline study aims for. Or even bigger things.
Right.
Like asking Google who you should marry. Harari paints this picture. Okay, Google, I'm dating John and Paul. They're both great. Based on my entire life history, my genetics, my emotional responses you've tracked, my long-term goals, who should I choose?
And Google, having processed more data about you than any human ever could, gives you the optimal answer.
In exchange for this kind of guidance, we basically hand over the reins. We integrate ourselves into the network, trusting the algorithm more than our own feelings or judgment. We trade autonomy for convenience and perceived optimality.
And this algorithmic authority isn't just personal. It's already running huge systems, like the economy.
Absolutely. High-frequency trading algorithms make billions of decisions a second, based on data flows humans can't even perceive, let alone react to. They control vast amounts of wealth.
And sometimes they go wrong, right? The flash crash, the Twitter hoax crash.
Exactly. Billions, even $1 trillion, wiped out in minutes because the algorithms reacted in unexpected ways. Humans are increasingly passengers, not drivers, in the financial system.
And Harari argues this speed mismatch is making traditional politics obsolete, too.
Yeah, politics still operates on this 19th century rhythm: elections every few years, slow debates. Technology is accelerating exponentially. Politicians can't keep up. They don't understand the forces reshaping society well enough.
Like AI, biotech.
Right. So politics becomes less about grand visions and steering society and more about just administration, keeping the lights on, fixing potholes, managing the day-to-day. They lose control of the future because the technological pace is too fast, and voters lack the deep understanding to guide them.
This sets up a fundamental conflict, doesn't it, between the old liberal humanist values and this new datist creed.
A huge clash. Dataism's highest value is information flow. Free the data, let it connect and process. Human experience is just one data pattern among many.
Whereas liberalism values individual experience, privacy, autonomy.
Exactly, and Harari uses the tragic story of Aaron Swartz to illustrate this clash.
The internet pioneer who developed RSS.
Yes, Swartz was a passionate believer in open access, that information wants to be free. A real dataset idealist.
And he clashed with JSTOR, the academic database.
Right. JSTOR represented the older view. Freedom of expression includes the right of creators, scientists, journals, to control access, maybe charge fees. Swartz saw their paywall as blocking vital information flow.
So he downloaded millions of articles intending to release them freely.
An act driven by his dataist beliefs. But it violated copyright law based on humanist ideas of ownership. It led to his prosecution and, tragically, his suicide.
A martyr for dataism, perhaps. A sign of the conflicts to come over who controls information and what its purpose is.
A really stark illustration of that collision between worldviews.
So where does all this leave us? Harari throws down a really heavy final challenge, doesn't he?
He does. He says, look, liberalism gave meaning to life based on this idea of individual free will and authentic feelings. But science is telling us that might be a delusion. Much like medieval people were deluded about God's grand plan.
And if we can engineer our desires, we can design our own will using technology, what's the basis for choosing anything? If our deepest feelings are just biochemical algorithms we can rewrite, where does meaning come from?
It's like we've found the nail holding the universe's meaning together, pulled it out, and now we don't know where to hammer it back in. We're becoming God's Homo Deus technologically, but we're philosophically lost.
And there's a dangerous psychological mechanism that might keep us locked into these potentially problematic paths. The sacrifice trap.
Ah, yes, the "our boys didn't die in vain" syndrome. It explains why we cling so hard to narratives, especially after we've invested heavily in them.
He uses the example of Italy in World War I. They joined the war for specific territorial gains, Trento and Trieste.
What seemed like a limited goal turned into a horrific meat grinder. They lost something like 700,000 soldiers in brutal battles, mostly for very little gain.
But did that make them question the war?
No, paradoxically, it made the story of the war the national sacrifice, the quest for glory even stronger. Because how could they admit all that suffering, all those deaths, were for nothing? The immense sacrifice forced them to believe the cause was worthwhile.
The cost validates the fiction.
Exactly. And Harari warns this applies directly to our huge investments in AI, biotech, data networks. Even if these projects lead to inequality, loss of freedom, dystopian outcomes, the sheer amount of money, effort, and political capital poured into them will create immense psychological pressure to believe it was all necessary, all for the best.
We'll double down on the fiction because the cost of admitting we were wrong is too high.
That's the inertia he sees driving us forward. So in this world flooded with information, where censorship works by drowning us in irrelevance rather than blocking things out.
Power shifts, doesn't it? From having access to data, which was power in the past,
to knowing what data to ignore, what stories to question, what narratives are driving us, perhaps blindly.
So this deep dive, hopefully, is giving you, our listener, a framework, a way to filter, to understand the huge shifts Harari maps out. The changing human agenda, the challenge to liberalism, the rise of algorithms that might know us better than we know ourselves.
The challenge isn't just about adapting to these changes. It's about figuring out how to find or create meaning when the very foundations of our previous worldview are being shaken by science and technology. How do you maintain your sense of self when the world tells you you're just a hackable algorithm?
Heavy questions to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Homo Deus. We hope this gives you plenty to think about as you navigate the future.
Until next time on Deep Dive English.